Yes, Oregon did indeed just do that, and I'm thinking about the longest yard.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks post-Dakorien Moore commitment. How about that? If you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Plenty of other things to get to on today's show, dropping before Friday, because Oregon got Dakorien Moore. Oh man, I am giddy with excitement over this one. If you were not aware, he is not just the number 3 player in the class of 2025, and he has bumped Oregon back into having a top 5 class on the 24/7 Sports High School Composite Rankings. He is not just the number 1 wide receiver in the class of 2025. He's not just the highest rated Oregon wide receiver commit of all time. He is the highest rated commit of all time. Yeah, just player ever passing Kayvon Thibodeau. It's an incredibly small margin, but that's where the hype on this guy is. And what a saga, because that's what it was. So all this craziness, which I'll get to in a sec, was making me think of The Longest Yard, which is one of my favorite movies ever. Definitely a top 10 sports movie all time for me, which is a fun debate in and of itself. When Michael Irvin and company first come over to join the football team, you know, Adam Sandler's Paul Crewe is up there at the line of scrimmage, and he's making a call on the first passing play he's going to throw to Deacon Moss is the character's name. He's going, "Battle, you're a psycho. Tony, you're fat. Hot, hot." And then he throws his ball up, and Deacon Moss, Michael Irvin, makes this big one-handed catch, and he does this amazing run, and then he gets to the end zone, he takes his helmet off, he throws it down, he goes, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And that's how I felt when Oregon got Dakorien Moore. Like, did you see that? Ooh. Gosh, I'm all sorts of fired up on this one. I imagine many of you are as well, because this is a commitment I've talked about for weeks, I think over the last couple months here on the show. Ever since he decommitted from LSU and Rashad Samples got hired from Texas, Oregon fans put on their tinfoil hats, just their miniature ones, not the big ones, and they connected the dots. His father's the coach at Duncanville High School. That's where he plays. And what do you know? Junior Adams, Rashad Samples, Dan Lanning, you give credit to whoever you want. Feels like a team effort, because this guy was sought after by some heavy hitters. LSU had him committed once upon a time. He has also said that he is shutting down his recruitment, that he is done. I'd take him at his word for that. I've seen crazier things happen, though. So barring a dramatic coaching staff change, this is a guy that's going to stay locked into Oregon through National Signing Day. But Texas was seen as the favorite. Oregon had to do some work. Look, I won't bore you with all the details of, you know, all the tracking of the recruitment and message board comments and what I'd heard from different sources about it. Oregon had to put in some real effort here, and they did. This is just a massive, massive pickup in the class of 2025. And it's a statement as much as anything. And notice we're, you know, almost 4 minutes into this podcast. I haven't even talked about what this guy brings to the table. Because as a wide receiver, he's the number 1 guy for a reason. There's a bunch of talent out there. Remember how good Kayvon Thibodeau was? He was the number 1 overall player. Dakorien Moore is the number 3 overall player. And you think about what Thibodeau was as an edge rusher, that's a position that's harder to contribute at early in your career because you're on the defensive line. Dakorien Moore in 2025 is going to walk onto Oregon's campus, and he is going to be in the receiver rotation. I will be stunned, absolutely stunned. In spite of all the talent Oregon has racked up at that position for this year and next year and the year after, there is going to be a receiving core, barring a transfer, that has Dakorien Moore and a 20-year-old Gatlin Bear. Dallas Wilson could still be in there too. You could legitimately have a receiving core with 4 or 5 stars as the high end, as the top end guys in 2026. That's not something that you used to ever even think as a possibility with Oregon. It's just not the way Oregon's recruited. But that man, Junior Adams, and I'm sure Rashad Samples is a part of this as well, he's just doing a heck of a job. Just a heck of a job. So, Pete Thamel almost became public enemy number one. For those who are unaware, allow me to fill you in. This got exciting for quite a while. We were hosting some dinner guests here at the house. I had to step aside to see where Dakorien Moore was going to go. And then Pete Thamel posts a tweet that goes live and had probably been scheduled out at 5 p.m. Pacific time when he was supposed to announce his decision originally. He moved it to 6 p.m. Pacific time. That's when the live stream started. But Thamel had a scheduled tweet to go out saying he had chosen Oregon. Then Dakorien Moore sees it and goes, I haven't said anything. What are you guys talking about? What is this craziness? And so then it didn't feel great because it's like, wait, does Pete Thamel know that this is what he's choosing? Which of course he did. Or did Pete Thamel just cost Oregon Dakorien Moore? Like he was on some thin ice with a lot of Oregon fans online. They were going to be hot and bothered, but thankfully it was all for nothing because Oregon got him, and it's all good. You know, like choosing the name and Better Call Saul. Saul Goodman, it's all good, man. It's all good. So he tweets that out. He takes it down. Everyone has to do retractions. I'm trying to keep track of everything that's going on to keep people as informed as I possibly can. And then he goes live on Instagram with his mom, and they've got a bunch of people there watching in his house. And he takes about 20 minutes of questions from his mom on the Instagram. You know, what went into this? How'd you get here? What'd you just all sorts of random questions and such. And his mom was very comfortable on camera. I got to give her props for that. That's not, I mean, maybe she's, acted or something. I don't know. I don't know what everybody's background is there, but a lot of times, people can get uncomfortable. They were very, very comfortable in that space, probably because their son's a big time recruit and they've probably done an interview or 17,000 before. And so then the time finally came where he said, all right, I'm going to make this selection. And then he goes outside. It was so good. It was so good. I was like, dude, what was it? You had everybody in the room, but then he goes outside and he's got this box or firework thing that explodes with green smoke, and he's got the Oregon gear and everything. And it was a wild 60 minutes, 90 minutes, quite frankly. It was a 90-minute ordeal. Some of us, perhaps me, were invested for that amount of time because I tuned in right at 5. I saw the tweet and I was like, wait, is that the real Pete Thamel? And I'm like triple checking, like, oh my gosh, it's the real Pete Thamel, because I saw it about 49 seconds after it had gone live. And I thought, oh my gosh, they got him? No way. This was going to be Texas. I was expecting this to be Texas. I knew Oregon had a shot. My guess would have been Texas. Gut instinct, and based on all the information that I'd heard and conversations with Brian on this show, Texas would have been my guess. And this is the second recruit that Oregon has pulled away from Texas that they thought they had. Josiah Sharma was the other one. And this is the third recruit in the last week that Oregon's pulled that had crystal balls on 24/7 to go elsewhere. Because, man, they're just going in and they're just putting in the work. Dorian Brew had a crystal ball to Ohio State. Going to Oregon. Going to Oregon. How about that? Dude is a baller. That was a wild, wild sequence. I've still got more thoughts on that. Somehow, some way. If you got questions or thoughts, let me know in the YouTube comments or hit me up on Twitter. X, formerly known as Twitter, currently known as Twitter. We all get the picture there. Still plenty more coming your way. Coming at you right now, eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Ooh, what a bonanza. So this is going to be most likely, I mean, there's still a ways to go in the recruiting class. I would think Oregon is done at wide receiver. They've got Dallas Wilson, 5-star. He's being recruited by other places. Oregon is set at quarterback, of course. They've got Achilles Smith Jr. I haven't heard anything else on Ty Hawkins, so I don't expect Oregon. I don't think they need to add another quarterback for the roster because they're going to have a battle in the spring between Dante Moore, Austin Novosad. Loser of that battle probably transfers out. Then you've got Luke Moga as the backup and Achilles Smith Jr. on the roster as a scholarship quarterback as well. I think Oregon's incredibly set at that position for the next several years. And the wide receiver room is just stacked. It's just stacked. Oregon has never brought in 2 5-star receivers before. That's what they're currently slated to do. Now, Dallas Wilson is not someone who is as locked into Oregon as Dakorien Moore. Dakorien said during his announcement, I'm shutting down my recruitment. It's done. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm not taking visits. Not right. That's not a direct quote. That's just me kind of projecting out into the ether. But he did say, I'm shutting down my recruitment after this. Like, it's done. It's over. So that's virtually a lock. Dallas Wilson, close to a lock. But if Oregon keeps him committed, that'll be the first time they've ever brought in 2 5-star receivers in the same class. Some people might be saying, what about Troy Franklin, Dante Thornton? Did not both have 5-star status. Both were really highly rated prospects. Big-time recruits. Thornton is, I think, going to have a big year at Tennessee. And, well, we know what Troy Franklin went on to do in his career. Dakorien Moore, man, he can headline the best run of wide receivers the University of Oregon has ever seen. That is not exaggerating things. You got Jeremiah McLaughlin and Ryan Pelham and Dylan Gresham in this class, all blue chip guys. Then next year you bring in Dallas Wilson and Dakorien Moore. You've already got Jurion Dickey, Kyler Casper on the roster. Gary Bryant Jr. could come back next year. Like this position group has been changed on the recruiting trail more than any other position. Maybe defensive line. Yeah, but they brought in Defoe and Armstead in the past and Deion Jordan. So that's 3 top 10 picks. Oregon, they're going to have a first or second round receiver at the end of this year in Evan Stewart. Now that's transfer, so it's slightly different, but they're going to have a first or second round receiver at the end of this year. And then after next year, probably not. And then the year after that, you're just going to have big time players. Big time players. Special teams, special plays, special players. So if you know, you know. Yeah, I love this commitment all the way. Let me know your thoughts and your questions, and I'll talk about this even more on Monday's show. But gosh almighty, what a whirlwind. What a sequence. What a recruiting effort by Dan Lanning and company. Gosh, those guys are good. Mailbag time, YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter. If you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, the flock over at Subtext was well in the know with everything that I knew in real time. You get that and all sorts of other benefits. I can't talk sometimes. I have too much energy to say my thoughts coherently. I'm going to close down. All right, speaking of pass catchers, let's move to 2024. This from Zaheem. Mailbag question. With our top 3 options at tight end being so phenomenal, Oregon fans aren't very concerned this offseason about who our 4th tight end will be on the depth chart. So if you had to guess, who will be Oregon's 4th tight end this upcoming season? Dakorien Moore. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So there are a couple different options for Oregon here. And I think the most likely option that I've heard is Travis Bashir, or Brashear with an R after the B. Big guy. Did not see the field, redshirted in 2023 as a freshman. Walk on, not someone you have super high expectations for. I think the tight end room is in an utterly fantastic place. I really do. Because you've got Terrence Ferguson and T. Ferg is going to play on Sundays. I am fully convinced of that. I have been perhaps the biggest proponent of T. Ferg and his abilities since I started hosting this show. Going into 2022, I felt like he'd have a big year. Had his best year yet. Season ago, first team All Pac-12. I was frankly a little surprised in the best way. I mean, there are a lot of great ways to surprise people, but that is one of them. I was a little surprised he came back because for someone who, has that size, has not really battled injuries in his career, has NFL prospects, and had a first-team all-conference caliber season, I don't know how often those guys come back, but it's a testament to the culture that Dan Lanning and the Oregon coaching staff have got, and also what those guys believe is possible this season. Guys like Jeff Bossa and Jordan Birch and Terrence Ferguson and a Johnny Cornelius, like they had the option to go to the NFL and they probably would have been drafted or at the very least been an undrafted free agent, but they wanted to come back to Oregon. I think to simultaneously improve their draft stock and compete for a national championship. I think they understand what can be this season if everything falls into place. And Dakorien Moore doesn't, impact 2024, but it speaks to just the overall momentum of the program right now. It's really, really high. So T. Ferg coming back, I think gives you as solid of an option as you're going to have at tight end. I mean, he's proven himself capable in pass protection, in run blocking. He's an elite pass catcher, good yards after the catch guy. He's really transformed his body to be that prototypical athletic tight end that can still block. And then behind him, you got Patrick Herbert. And for Patrick Herbert, he's had a little bit of an injury-riddled career, but last 2 years has really showcased why he was a blue chip recruit coming out of high school. And it took him a while to make an impact, but as far as backup tight ends go, really solid. And if T. Ferg were to go down, yeah, there'd be a drop-off. It wouldn't be substantial. I think you'd lose a little bit of the route running that T. Ferg has. I think he's got, better hands and contested catch capabilities. Like he's certainly a lot more proven in that realm. But overall, losing a tight end, like it doesn't move a number in Las Vegas. Colin Cowherd used to say all the time, well, if Gronkowski's out, Vegas isn't moving the line, but for maybe half a point, if that. And he's not wrong that Vegas does not think tight ends are a highly impactful position. You can't go way down the depth chart. Like if Travis Brashear has to play a meaningful role on the team this season, that is a problem. Because that means you're having multiple injuries. Because you got 3 tight ends you feel good about. Those 2, and then Kenyon Sadiq, another guy who I've been a massive, massive fan of since Oregon got him in the class of 2023. Just a unique athlete. I think he's going to play a significantly more impactful role in the offense this year compared to what he had a season ago. But the other thing is, if the season plays out the way I think it will, you could have Kenyon Sadiq being the number 2 tight end at the end of the year. Not because Patrick Herbert did anything wrong or isn't capable, but because Sadiq's athletic profile is just a lot higher. Now, what this will come down to is how Sadiq is able to, prove himself serviceable and capable as a blocker. Because Patrick Herbert is not elite in that sense, but he's certainly more experience. He's had more years in the weight room, and Sadiq has transformed his body to gain about 20 pounds or so this offseason, and I think is capable, more than capable, of being a good blocker, and that's a really, really important part of playing that tight end spot. But for Sadiq, his playmaking ability is just so high. And frankly, you could have packages where they're on the field at the same time. Oregon had that last year. Casey Kelly and T. Ferg and Kenyon Sadiq were all on the field sometimes. Like 13 personnel is something Oregon can run in the red zone. And I think with Sadiq, you can get really, really clever with the play calls because, like, just thinking out loud, for instance, if you want to show, hey, here's a heavy set, we're shotgun, we're 13 personnel, 1 back, 3 tight ends, and you bunch them on the end of the line of scrimmage. I'm not an offensive coordinator, but I've watched football every now and then. You can flex Sadiq out, throw him a jump ball in the corner of the end zone, or have him, take a one-on-one with a corner. And frankly, T-Ferg can do that too. I mean, that jump ball to T-Ferg against Arizona State last year was a touchdown, except the official botched the call. Oh, so stupid. Just called the dumbest offensive pass interference I have ever seen. I have seen far greater things not called offensive pass interference than that. But those two guys, I think in that situation, that's not the sort of ball or play that you would design for Patrick Herbert. It is one that you can call for either T-Ferg or Sadiq, depending on what his progression has been like. But, both guys are former wide receivers. T-Ferg played some wide receiver in high school, but I think the depth chart there, going 3 deep with those guys, is really, really good. Now, Brashear's really big. He could be, a little bit more of a run blocker. I don't know if he's the most nimble running with the ball in his hands, but he's not the automatic fourth tight end on the roster. You have to remember that AJ Pugliano is an incoming true freshman, and Roger Saliapaga, who was a wide receiver in high school, also an incoming true freshman. Now, Saliapaga might need a year to kind of get his body into tight end shape because he's a little bit more of a wide receiver frame. He's listed at 6'4", 220. So that's about what Kenyon Sadiq played at last year. And, he's out of Orem, Utah, listed as a wide receiver from there. And, has an interesting athletic profile, kind of similar to what Sadiq brings to the table. And Pugliano, also 6'3.5", 220, but, played more of that traditional tight end spot. So either one of them could be that guy that steps up if one of those players were to go down with an injury. Because I think you saw with Oregon last year, you need to have 3 tight ends. It sounds ridiculous to be discussing, well, what's Oregon going to do, for the fourth tight end spot on the roster? They use 3. They regularly did last year, and the tight ends are an important part of the offense. And, Will Stein talked in his offseason media availabilities about how they were, trying to get T-Ferg and Kenyon Sadiq more involved in the offense. And I think Oregon's got a lot of mouths to feed. It is definitely a challenge. But I think that if you look at where that room is in totality, it's in a good spot. I have no concerns about, I think you can survive an injury to T-Ferg, or if Sadiq goes down, or if Herbert goes down. Having to go with either a walk-on in spot duty or a true freshman at the tight end spot, I don't think that's asking too much, because they probably wouldn't be required to do too much. But having 3 guys who could be a number 1 tight end and be at least serviceable, I think puts Oregon in a good position. Where are Oregon's national title hopes at going into this year? Pretty high. We'll talk about that next. After, of course, we talk about Game Time, which is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minutes for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., whatever you're looking for. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Just take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, this will be my last show for the week. I know it's dropping on Friday night, but I figure some people might have wanted the Dakorien Moore reaction. So we'll close with a couple of mailbag questions here. Again, YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter, or if you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, go join the flock over at Subtext. There's a free 14-day trial. If you decide you don't like it, no pressure whatsoever. 2-part fun question. Were we a Caleb Downs transfer and no injuries away from a close to lock national title this year? I know it's hard to say ever, but sure feels like it. Speaking of injuries, would you take Dylan Gabriel not playing a single snap due to injury if it meant not a single other injury happened? I debate it because injuries can play a big role, and Dante Moore isn't much of a drop-off. There's a question from Dylan, by the way. I'll start with the first part. No. Oregon is not, a Caleb Downs transfer and no injuries away from close to a national title lock this year because Georgia is still a thing. Texas is really good. I think you're a Caleb Downs and no injuries transfer away or no injuries away from a Big Ten championship appearance lock. From there, got to make it happen on the field. No guarantees. There just aren't. We saw that last year. Oregon was heavily favored in the Pac-12 title game. Didn't have a good day. Washington outplayed them. And that doesn't mean that Oregon was completely and totally incapable of beating Washington, but they weren't able to do it last year. So I think the national title hopes and that sort of discussion is completely reasonable. I think you look at this team and you compare it to Georgia 2022. I think Georgia has taken a step back, but they're still the national title favorites in my view. And Oregon has taken like 2 or 3 steps forward. If they played today, even if Georgia were to win, I guarantee you that game is not 49-3. That is not something that would transpire. So I think the national title hopes are completely within reach. Do I know if it'll be this year? No. Could it be? Yeah. It's going to happen eventually. It's a matter of when, not if, in my view. Oregon actually wins national title. It could be this year. It could be 20 years from now. I don't know. I plan to still have this show and be covering it regardless of when it happens. But, I don't think that we're that close to being a national title lock, though Oregon is squarely in the mix, and they should be. I don't think this is just preseason overhype, or I would say as much. I think Oregon deserves the preseason attention that they are getting, and now they've got to go back it up on the field. And that's the never-ending cycle of college football. Hype your team up. You either live up, surpass, or don't meet expectations. Those are the only options. Last year, I think Oregon just about met expectations. Before the year, I said they should win at least 10 games. They should get to the Pac-12 title game. That was meeting expectations. Surpassing them would have been winning the Pac-12 and going to the national championship game. Did not achieve that. Not meeting expectations would have been not getting to the conference title game. But that's the standard every year for Oregon, playing in a conference with no divisions. Get to the Big Ten championship game and or the college football playoff. That's baseline in the 12-team era. As for your second question, in no way would I ever choose a hypothetical where the starting quarterback goes down. No. And injuries do happen every year. It's why we talk extensively about depth. It's why I was going in depth on the tight end position and why Oregon's in a good spot there. You have to be able to hold up. And last year, Oregon wasn't able to hold up with their depth in the secondary because when there were injuries there, no one could cover that Washington offense with those 3 receivers. But once both Jaleel Florence and Kyrie Jackson were out of that Pac-12 championship game, Oregon couldn't get enough stops. They weren't pressuring Penix enough, but they weren't able to cover. They were not able to cover. They did not have enough high-end cover guys to go up against an offense like that. Thankfully, they don't have to see an offense like that this year. I know Jed Fish is good, and Ohio State's offense will be good with Chip Kelly at the helm. It's nothing like last season. There are no first-round quarterbacks in the Big Ten. I don't even know if there are second- or third-round quarterbacks this year in the Big Ten that will come out in the 2025 NFL draft class. But no, I would not take Dante Moore starting with an injury-free team over Dylan Gabriel starting with a normal injury season. I think overall Oregon had a pretty normal injury season last year. Noah Whittington got hurt, and they had the secondary injuries, but teams get beat up. Guys are injured. It's football. That's the way that the cookie crumbles. Last question here from Pierre for today, for the week. Submit all your questions, and we'll be right back at it Monday morning, I assure you. Spencer, these new uniforms have me excited, so I have a couple questions you can answer here on the pod. Do we have an idea of when the next release will be? That's 1. And 2, what is your Mount Rushmore of Oregon uniforms? Mine would have to be the 2015 BCA uniforms. BCS, like national championship uniforms, I presume is what you're going for. Once a Duck, Ohana, and the throwbacks that debuted that last season. So this is a tough one. To answer your first question, have not heard anything about a new concept or anything that is going to come out. Would not be surprised if something else gets dropped going into the year, but Have not heard, read, or seen anything to indicate that that is the case. I thought the black jerseys they came out with it have the steel plate and the wings on them, and then the wings on the helmets, and it's all black. I think it's cool. I think it's a really, really cool look. Mount Rushmore has got 4 faces on it. Props to anybody who could name those 4 faces in the YouTube comment section. Scout's honor. No cheating, please. My top 4. Number 1, last year's throwbacks. I think those are the best uniforms Oregon's ever had. They were so good. They were so thoroughly good. Number 2, 2010 Stormtrooper look. Storm LA, all white, big fan. Wish we would wear all white more often. I am a big fan of the all white look. Number 3, 2012 Rose Bowl against Wisconsin. Darren Thomas, LaMichael James, green pants, green jersey, and the introduction of the chrome helmets that reflect the sunset and the stadium and whatnot. Those were utterly fantastic. And then I did like the national championship outfits, but the all apple green in the Rose Bowl, Florida State, 2015 was the year. 2014 was the season. I thought those were really, really good. And they had the Fighting Ducks logo on it as well. So that'd be my my Mount Rushmore of those 4. Which uniforms would you put on there that I left off? Let me know. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.